Thank you very much, Dr. Reed. I'm Peter Shirkey. I'm the principal of Innovation Lab High School, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about the design for this new school that we have come up with and we think is going to be something very special for North Shore. I want to start by introducing myself. I'm all of these things up here. I started my career as a scientist. I am an author and a musician. I'm an engineer who actually worked for NASA for a while. I'm an educator. I'm a composer. I really wish I could say with a straight face that I was an artist, but my talent in that realm has never progressed beyond stick figures. I'm going to warn you right now, they don't get any better. They're just going to keep coming. So go ahead, laugh at my lame jokes, toss me a pity laugh every so often. We're all friends here. But when I start to combine these talents in ways no one has ever thought of before, I become something more. I become something greater. I become an innovator. And that's where I want to talk to you about tonight, is how do we create innovators? I have been on a heck of a journey this fall and into the winter. Almost 12,000 miles of learning. Starting locally, going to some of the most innovative schools here in the Northwest. Then taking a trip to San Diego to visit High Tech High. Then a trip to Casco Bay High School for Expeditionary Learning in Portland, Maine, one of the model schools for the expeditionary learning model you will hear more about as this presentation goes on. Then I went to the Expeditionary Learning National Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. For those of you who know your geography, I've just covered pretty much the four corners of the continental United States. So, ferry boats, lots of miles on my truck, lots of airline miles on my credit card, and suddenly I've been on a heck of a journey. Oh, and that mountain of books, it's gotten about 5 taller since I took that picture. So I have several metaphors for you today, but first I want to start with a little history lesson. I need to talk a little louder apparently, so I'm going to talk a little louder for the folks who are in the back. Our schools were designed for this: factory line workers. In 1893, a group of industrialists that called themselves the Committee of 10 got together and designed a system of schooling that revolutionized the way education was happening in America. It transformed from the one-room schoolhouse to a system designed to produce workers who could do the same task over and over and over again. And our schools have gotten phenomenally better since then. But the core of that model is still at the core of our schools today. Subjects divided by disciplines. Credits accumulated for the amount of time you've spent in a class, etc. And over the years, our schools have gotten better and better and better. And don't believe the hype in the news today about failing schools. Our schools are the best they have ever been. And there is data to prove it. However, the pace of change in our society, especially in the last 20 years, has begun to radically outpace the pace of change in our schools, until we have now gotten to the point where our society has passed our schools by. And today, this is what the factory looks like. All of those jobs that used to require repetitive tasks are being offshored or automated right out of existence. And the sad truth is those jobs are never, ever coming back. We have an obligation today to begin educating our students for jobs that may not even exist yet. And in many cases, we are educating our students for jobs they will be creating themselves. And to do that, they need to become innovators. I love this quote because this quote addresses a commonly held misconception about innovation. Innovation's not just for Steve Jobs, it's not just for Bill Gates, it's not just for Elon Musk. Innovation is something everybody can do. It's something we all have done. Think of any 3-year-old who picks up 2 toys and begins to play with them in a way you have never seen before, that combination. They have just innovated. It's not the iPhone, but it is an innovation because they are bringing together disparate ideas in a new way. which begs the definition. We have to be really clear about what is innovation. There are two different types of innovation out there. The first type is the flashy kind, the kind that people think of when they're talking about STEM, the iPhone, the internet, Facebook, Instagram, etc., the techie things, the shiny things. But that's not the only kind of innovation there is, because at its heart, innovation just is creative problem solving. And when you talk about creative problem solving, that can happen in virtually any realm of human endeavor. And it's happening all the time in the social realm as people are bringing to bear their talents to make social change and innovation. So every endeavor in human history that continues to grow and change does so because of research and development. The tech companies have research and development. Our car companies have research and development. Everything has research and development. The question is, where's the R&D for education? We have professors in colleges who are coming up with great theories that may or may not work great in the classroom. We have practitioners in the classroom who are coming up with incredible innovations that rarely spread beyond 1 or 2 classrooms. How do we put them together? We put them together by intentionally bringing them together. And that's what we're proposing at Innovation Lab High School. We're talking about what we're calling an Innovation Lab approach, where we are going to identify promising practices to take a look at, study, revise, and develop until we get them to a point where we believe they're worth further pursuit and that they can scale. And then we can make them available to the rest of the North Shore School District as they are desired, so that all students in North Shore benefit from the work being done in Innovation Lab. We're going to look differently at the way school happens. Where does it happen physically? Does it have to happen only in a classroom, or does it spill out into the hall? Does it happen in the cafeteria? Does it happen outside? Does it happen with partners in the community? Does it happen at home because a student is so engrossed in a project they want to continue working on it? How does it happen intellectually? Not every student learns the same way. Not every student learns at the same rate. But every student can learn, and every student can learn deeply. And then looking in terms of our curricular materials, we're going to start off using the same materials as everyone else in the district, but we're going to look at ways to start using those materials differently, examining them from multiple lenses instead of cordoning them off into different disciplines the way the Committee of 10 had us do in 1893. So I told you I like metaphors. Here's my first big metaphor for you. I want you to visualize an aircraft carrier. Okay? An aircraft carrier is the pinnacle of naval architecture on Earth. I know because my brother's a naval architect. And he talks about how incredible aircraft carriers are. They are a floating city. Thousands of people, each doing their role toward the mission. You can take off and land planes from its deck. An aircraft carrier has a tendency to change events around it to suit its mission, rather than changing to suit those events. And it's got a turning radius measured in miles, which makes it a great metaphor for a comprehensive high school. A lot of incredible things go on at a comprehensive high school, and they're very resistant to change. Now, we have a different metaphor for Innovation Lab High School, something that is far more nimble, far more agile, say a speedboat. Better able to turn when the need to turn is evident. Following along the line of examining a practice and we realize that this practice isn't working out, okay, let's try something else. Finding that this practice isn't working the way we thought it was, but if we make this tweak, it starts working much better, so we make that turn. You wouldn't try and land an aircraft on a speedboat. If you did, it would have disastrous results. And you wouldn't ask an aircraft carrier to navigate the tight turns of the shoals in near shore. Each has its purpose. Neither is necessarily better than the other They're just different. Many students are incredibly well served by the comprehensive high school. Some need the speedboat. Which brings me to who is an Innovation Lab high school student? It could be any student. I believe in my core every student could benefit from the experience at Innovation Lab High School. And we've made a commitment that we want the student body of Innovation Lab to look like the student body that makes up the entire North Shore School District, which means we're going to have some students who are fairly typical. We're going to have some students who have special education services, some who have English language learner services, some who have free and reduced lunch services, some who are from our HiCap program, some who are twice exceptional, some who are absolutely brilliant students who never do their homework and they just don't fit in on the aircraft carrier because that student needs the speedboat. So we have been, I will get to questions at the end, thank you. When we have been involved all year, as Dr. Reed foreshadowed, with Dr. Tony Wagner in looking at his research and helping to guide some of the design to our school. And one of the things that Dr. Wagner has found in his interviews with hundreds of the most innovative people in the world is the idea that their parents encouraged a sense of active play in their childhood, got them involved in lots of things. That play led to a sense of true passion in their adolescence as they were really beginning to blossom and examine something that they felt was the thing for them. And that led to an adult life where they feel a deep sense of purpose in the work that they're doing. There it is. It's the same thing through each one of those interviews. Play leads to passion, leads to purpose. So this has an implication for our work at Innovation Lab High School. We need to put play back into the classroom so that we can lead our students to their passions, so that we put them on a path toward an adult life that has a deep sense of purpose. For those of you who heard Dr. Wagner at his talk a couple of days ago, he talked about how these are the same types of skills that not only are necessary for the innovation economy we are now entering, they're the same skills needed for lifelong learning. They're the same skills needed to be active and engaged members of society, and they are the same skills needed for a lifetime of active leisure that our students will have more and more of because they're going to live longer. He's identified 4 critical skills for innovation. The most foundational is great communication skills. It doesn't matter how great an idea you have, and you could have the greatest idea in the world. If you can't communicate it with other people, your idea is going to die because no one else will understand it. Collaboration. Collaboration is a critical skill because the days of Edison going into his laboratory and spending 10,000 tries all by himself to create a light bulb are long gone. They're history. Nowadays, collaboration is the coin of the realm. It's the way that innovation happens as groups of people get together and bring together their ideas until something brand new comes out. Critical thinking. It has never been more imperative that we teach our students to be great critical thinkers than now. The vast array of information sources that they encounter on a daily basis, it's staggering. I was listening to a podcast in the car on my way to my very first one of these presentations last Monday night, and the host was talking to an expert who was telling them that from just a few words recorded in a phone call, someone can take that voice print and create an entire speech in your voice saying things you have never said. That level of fakery demands we teach our students to be excellent consumers of knowledge, the sources of those knowledge, and excellent reasoners in terms of the veracity of those sources. And at its heart, when you bring those 3 together, is that uniquely human trait of creative problem solving. Pardon me, this is like my 87th time through the presentation, and occasionally I stumble. Machine intelligence can do the other three to some extent or another, but machine intelligence still cannot create the way human beings can. And fundamental to creativity is that sense of curiosity that we need our students to have. There's also a critical disposition for innovation, and this one's really hard for schools. It's risk tolerance, because schools are incredibly risk-averse places. Students very rapidly become averse to any kind of risk, because if they take a risk, they risk failure. And failure is the worst thing that can happen in a school. But the problem is, we always tell our students you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. We need students willing to take risks to learn, because when you make mistakes, you learn more. When a student makes no mistakes, there's a case to be made. They've not actually learned something, they've just applied something they already know. Without failure, there's not nearly as much learning happening. And some of the most innovative companies in the world now talk about failure all the time. Fail early, fail often. Fail fast, fail forward, fail safe, fail cheap. But they're all talking about failure because they know that the way to innovation lies through my new favorite word, iteration. Moving from 1.0 to 2.0 and then to 3.0 as you get feedback on what you're doing and you increase the value of your product, you make your product better. Getting information on that paper that you wrote, getting feedback, and then using that feedback to make your writing better. So I have a mission and I have a vision, and right now I'm the whole school. So right now this is the school's mission and the school's vision, but eventually I will have a staff and we'll go through a process where we take a look at this and come to an agreement. But meanwhile, it's mine. So my vision is that Innovation Lab is going to be a place where students and teachers are engaged in work that is challenging, adventurous, and meaningful. And that because of that, learning and achievement are going to flourish. And the mission is to create a community where teachers fulfill their highest aspirations and students achieve more than they thought possible. Together, they become innovative contributors to a better world. I'll give you an example of students achieving more than they thought possible. An expeditionary learning school in Genesee, New York, the students walked back and forth to school every day past a pond that was fenced off because everybody knew there was something wrong with the pond. Nobody knew what was wrong with the pond. They just knew there was something wrong with the pond. They got curious about it, and they decided to ask for permission to study the pond. So they wrote up a proposal, they went to the city government, they got permission to study the pond. They wrote out protocols for studying the water quality, for studying the biodiversity of the flora and the fauna. They got permission to go into the archives and try and figure out who gave permission to put the fence up, who put the fence up, why did the fence get put up. They were looking at this problem as scientists, both chemically and biologically. They were looking at this problem as historians. Then once they had data, they were beginning to look at it as mathematicians as they began to model the data. And once they had finished their analysis, they wrote up a formal proposal to the city, bringing to bear their writing skills that they were learning. And in the end, they took a report to the city that said, there's nothing wrong with the pond, and we should turn it into a park so that we have a community asset instead of a community eyesore. And the city did it. And now they can go eat lunch in the park, or they can play in the park on their way home from school. And when you asked those students, did you ever think you could accomplish that? Not one of them thought that they could accomplish something that big. They accomplished something more than they thought possible. Here are the things we want learning to be at Innovation Lab. it has to be challenging if it's going to be meaningful. And if we're going to infuse play back into the classroom, it's got to be active, because I cannot imagine play looking like everybody sit still, don't move, don't fidget. I'm sorry, it just doesn't compute. Learning's got to be collaborative, because we got to build that skill in our students, and learning is going to be public, because when students know they are putting their work out into the world, it makes it more meaningful to them. We're going to have to be very flexible. As you're going to see in a moment, our building is one gigantic open space right now. And we're figuring out ways to subdivide that space into learning spaces that are going to be highly configurable and reconfigurable, using some movable partitions so that we have learning spaces to work in. Our teachers, I'm going to be working with them to adopt more of a coaching mentality, knowing when to push, knowing when to back off, knowing when to come alongside and say, I see you struggling. How can I help? And we're going to be constantly evolving, because if we're going to be the speedboat and we're constantly experimenting, that experimenting means we are occasionally going to be changing direction and evolving our practices. Now, I would love to be holding this meeting over at the school. It's down in the Canyon Park Business Park. But right now, it's a construction site. We can't get in there. So I figured the best thing I could do for you is shoot some film of that so that you can see what the school looks like. I'm going to move past you so I can get over here and start. Here we are, just inside our main lobby. Once construction's finished, this will be a warm entryway inviting our students, families, and community into our building. Here we are in the Great Hall. We intend to keep this large, flexible space open to facilitate many different possible uses. It's actually large enough that we'll be able to accommodate the entire student body for all school meetings or events. Now stick with me here, because we're going to imagine away all those cubicles in just a second. Meanwhile, take a look at how much natural light every learning space will have because of all those windows. The learning spaces will be large and flexible, with movable partitions that can be reconfigured as our needs change. Here we have a high-level rendering provided by our architect of what the second or third floor might look like. Let's take a look at 3 views a little closer up. This is a view from the hallway looking into a learning space. The cubicles are gone now, and instead we have highly configurable furniture that allows each group to customize the space for their needs. Here they envision a view from inside a classroom. They've put in some standard tables and chairs as a reference to help us understand the size of the space. This is a view from the same place, but with the movable partitions retracted to open up the space. This can facilitate greater collaboration between groups of students. One of the greatest features of our building is how much collaborative space there is. In addition to 2 formal presentation spaces like the one you just saw, there are numerous smaller collaborative spaces like these all over the building, where students and staff alike can meet in groups of various sizes, hold discussions, or work on projects. This is our cafeteria space. Much like the rest of the building, our cafeteria will have a number of flexible alternatives for students, different types of seating, and different food options to choose from. We'll have fresh food vending machines, a hot lunch line, and a cold case. There's even a small kitchenette with microwave ovens and an instant hot water dispenser, so that students can warm up their own food if that's their choice. Well, that's our tour. Thanks for stopping by. There's a lot of exciting things about to happen at Innovation Lab High School as we open our doors to students in September of 2020, and we invite you to come and be a part of them. Imagine the possibilities. All right, so how's it going to work? Well, I've said a couple of times, if we're injecting play back into the classroom, it's likely going to get a bit messy. And that's okay, because we are trying to lead students to find their passion. We're going to prioritize depth of learning over breadth of coverage, because deep learning is permanent learning. And we all know that students who go through the cycle of memorize, dump, forget aren't really learning much of anything at all. In fact, one of the premier prep schools on the East Coast decided to do a study. They asked their administration the administration asked the teachers to give them copies of the final exam they had given in June, because they were going to give those same final exams to the same students in September. And the average score went from a B to an F. Not one student got within 2 grades of what they had achieved in June. And the teacher said, "Whoa, that's not fair. If we'd have known you were going to do that, we'd have taught totally differently." And the administration said, "Fine, do it. We're doing it again next year." And the next year it went from a B to an F, and not one single student was within 2 grades of what they had achieved in the spring. And it made them change the way they approached their practice. Because when we're just trying to cover as much as possible, students don't retain what they've learned. We're going to have public celebrations of learning so where students can show off the incredible work they have done, so that you as family can see the products your students have achieved. And they're going to be making portfolios of their work, and those portfolios are going to be digital. We'll talk a little bit more about those. They'll be able to use those portfolios for a number of things, not least of which is their college admissions. Judy Gilbert used to be the director of talent for Google, and this quote speaks to the fact that innovation almost never happens anymore at the core of any one discipline. It happens at the mesh points between them. When you bring together art and history, and you get art history. Oh, come on, people. When you bring together math and English, when you bring together art and science, you get something new and something special as the students begin to create something that no one else has done before. And we have an opportunity at Innovation Lab High School. We talk all the time in education about trying to engage our students. And having our students engaged in the content is a great idea, but it's often a difficult lift because engaging our students means getting them interested in our curriculum and our content and our interests, and those aren't always theirs. I think instead we should be aiming a little higher. We should be aiming to empower our students, because when students are empowered, it means we have given them the knowledge and the skills to pursue their passion and their interests and to pursue their future. And when a student is empowered, it makes the motivation to learn come from within. And that intrinsic motivation is worth 100 times a candy reward. We want our students operating as design thinkers. We want them wondering about a really complex problem, observing it, questioning, how does that work? Really, really thinking it, studying it. And then the most important part, we want them identifying the aspect of the problem to be unraveled. Too often, we as educators hand our students the problem, and the student says, "Thank you, I guess I have to solve your problem now." But it's not theirs, it doesn't mean anything to them, and the motivation isn't there. When the students have identified the problem, they own it. It's theirs. It means something to them, and they want to solve it. This is one of the things that comes out of the expeditionary learning world. It is the idea that we have one vision for our students, but that one vision can be described in 3 dimensions. Our schools do a fantastic job of helping students master knowledge and skills. And mastering of knowledge and skills is something that's easily measured on a test. But when our students graduate, it's probably the last time in their lives that they will be measured by a standardized test score. For the rest of their lives, what matters is the quality of their character and the quality of their work. Those are the two things by which they are measured, and those are two things for which it is critical we attend. One of the ways that expeditionary learning does that is through the concept of crew. And no, there are no boats involved. The name crew comes from this quote by Outward Bound founder Kurt Hahn. You see, passengers are just along for the ride. They're going wherever the boat takes them. They're not putting out much effort. Crew are helping to steer the boat. Crew are making sure we get to our destination. Crew are looking out for the needs of those around them. It operates as both a culture and a structure. As a culture, it impels every member of the school community to pitch in, help out, make sure we all get up the mountain together, because it's not good enough for me to get to the summit if I left my team behind. And as a structure, it is a place and a time to get stuff done. Think advisory on steroids. Students can be taking care of all of those administrative tasks that drive teachers nuts because it takes away academic time. They can be curating their portfolios. They can be working on college applications when they get up into the higher grades. They have a mutual support network of other students they know have their back, and they know they have at least one staff member who knows them deeply. Crew is an amazing engine of equity in the schools because every student is deeply known by at least one staff member. We try and make sure there are no cracks for students to fall through. And it operates at multiple levels because we have a staff level crew making sure we are attending to the needs of our staff so that that staff can then turn around and serve our students as the advisors for their crews. Oftentimes, expeditionary learning schools have a series of guiding questions to help orient their students to their learning. For example, in 9th grade, having students focusing on identity, who am I? In 10th grade, beginning to look around them at their community, where am I? In 11th grade, beginning to have them looking forward, thinking futuristically, where am I going? And then in 12th grade, expanding even further on that, how do I become a better local to global citizen? Expeditionary learning schools have a deeply ingrained ethic of service. Those deep projects where students are achieving a depth of learning are often focused on a problem found right there within their community, like the folks at Genesee High. They often have a social or environmental justice theme, and the students take part in defining those problems because then they mean more. And they're always remembering that community success is more important than just me. I've mentioned before that we're going to have our students building portfolios of their work, portfolios that include artifacts that demonstrate their highest levels of mastery. Some artifacts that may show growth over time, which they had to do multiple iterations to improve the quality, demonstrating that they have begun to learn grit and perseverance. Artifacts that may have been especially challenging for that student and they are really proud that they overcame the challenge. Or work that shows where they still have growth to make, because knowledge of self is important, and knowing our limitations is just as important as knowing our strengths. And they're going to be digital because it's the 21st century and it's high time students stop carrying around a wheelbarrow full of paper. Another aspect of the expeditionary learning model that I absolutely love, that many students in expeditionary learning schools cite as the most powerful part of their school experience, is the idea of passage presentations. At the end of 10th grade, students use their portfolio to do a public presentation demonstrating they are ready to be promoted to 11th grade. Students, don't worry, you've got this, okay? Students talk about how this was one of the most powerful things they had ever done. Being able to stand up and say, hello, my name is Peter, welcome to my presentation. I'm going to show you some work today that demonstrates my levels of mastery and shows I am ready to be promoted to 11th grade. I'm going to show you some of my work that demonstrates I am capable of perseverance and growth. There's a book written by a former principal at an expeditionary learning school where he quotes an anecdote of a student with an IEP who was terrified going into their passage presentation. And he told him, Michael, we've rehearsed this for 2 months. You know your portfolio. You're gonna do fine. And then Michael stood up and introduced himself. And he said afterwards, people could not tell the difference between his portfolio, his work, and other people. But as Michael introduced himself, he said, hello, I'm Michael. Some of my work looks different than others because I have some challenges others don't. And I have learned to overcome those challenges. What a powerful thing for that student to be able to stand up and say, focusing not on what their deficits are, but how they have used their strengths to overcome them. And at the end of 12th grade, we give students the opportunity to reflect back on their academic journey and pass on what they have learned to the rest of the student body. It's a passage often known as the last word that students get to pass on their wisdom. We're going to tackle grading practices. And we're going to look for grading practices that do a better job of rewarding creativity, that do a better job of rewarding learning, instead of practices that just reward compliance. One of the ways we're going to start is with ABC, not yet. I got a bunch of students in here. Imagine you just got a paperback and it's got a big old red F on it. What's going through your mind? Oh man, I failed that paper. It was a stupid assignment anyway. Teacher hates me. This class is bogus. The spiral happens really fast and I've seen it way too many times. An F is an invitation to disconnect. Not yet communicates, we're not there yet, but here's some feedback. Let's do another iteration and let's improve this. Because you may not be there yet, but we're going to get you there. It's a far more positive and a far more hopeful way of supporting our students in getting to mastery. I come back to this often because it's really important that everybody is aware. This is going to be a place of change. It's an ever-evolving school. It's likely Innovation Lab may look different in week 4 than it did in week 1. And if it doesn't look different in year 3 than it did in year 1, I have failed as a leader to continue to promote that evolution of our practices. We're going to begin, however, grounded in the familiar, because if you remember up at the top, I'm a scientist. And if you're a scientist, you know you have to start from a baseline. So we're going to start from a baseline that looks familiar to what students are acquainted with. And it's going to begin to change from there. And those changes will likely be early. Those changes will likely come often as we go through those iterations. We are likely going to make some mistakes. We're going to make them together. Because the students, here's the beautiful thing, the students aren't research subjects. The students are co-researchers with us. They are participants in this experiment because their voice matters. And when we make mistakes, we're going to celebrate them as invitations to the next iteration. Speaking of iteration, this is about version 5.0 of the design. I get lots and lots of feedback, and every time I incorporate it in. But I see several coming bursts of creativity on the horizon. Version 6.0 is when I actually have a staff. And there's more than just my mind on the problem, because remember, innovation's a team sport, and if we're going to engage in some creative problem solving, I need more ideas than I can come up with myself. So we are going to start putting together ideas, and we're going to start coming up with things that I alone could never have dreamed of. And then in September, we're going to add the next ingredient that brings about the next burst of innovation. Version 7.0 is students. Because remember, students, you are just as critical to this as anybody else. In fact, you're more critical to this than anybody else. You're the reason we do what we do. And then about the third evening I was doing this presentation, I had a parent come up to me and said, "You forgot 8.0. "You have my attention, sir." He said, "You forgot parents." Because parents, we need you. Part of what we need to do is we need to touch base with you periodically so we can ask, how are we doing? And we need your feedback. High school is the age when oftentimes parents really begin to back off. And the irony is it's one of the points in your student's career when they need you most. And so we need you to not disengage. We need you to stay part of the process. We will find a place for you, and we want to nurture and grow that relationship. So, it's the wrap-up. What does Innovation Lab need? Well, primarily, Innovation Lab needs some courageous young people who really want something different, a school that honors their strengths and empowers them to achieve more than they thought possible. And I need a staff. I need a staff full of people who are passionate about this project, who are going to feel a deep sense of purpose in the work they are doing. Because remember that through line, play to passion to purpose. If these things resonate with you, if you like what you hear, it's just possible that Innovation Lab needs you. That's my presentation tonight. I will take any questions you have. Thank you for your kind attention. And I had a very early hand up over here.